Before you build your business, you have to define your life. In this episode of the Deep Dive, we turn inward to discover what Michael Gerber calls your primary aim, the vision that gives your work true direction.
That's right.
We've got some really powerful excerpts here from his book, The E-Myth Revisited, and they seriously challenge the usual way people think about starting and running a business.
They really do. It's quite a mindset shift he proposes.
So our mission today isn't just, summarizing Gerber. We want to really deep dive into this fundamental concept. What is the primary aim? Why does he argue it's the absolute first thing, the most crucial step? And how can finding it actually fundamentally transform, well, everything, your work, your life?
And there's this amazing story in there, too, isn't there? A really personal one from Gerber himself.
Exactly. It perfectly illustrates what happens when you don't have that aim and the huge shift when you finally figure it out.
Yeah, it's a perspective change that feels almost radical.
Yeah.
Especially for a book people often grab for, like, practical business tips.
Right.
Gerber just flips the script right away. He insists that you, the entrepreneur, you're the real starting point. Not the business idea, not the market.
Not the product.
No. It forces this level of, self-examination that most people probably just skip over.
Definitely. We want the how-to first.
But he makes such a compelling case that you can't skip it. It's indispensable.
Okay, so let's unpack that foundational idea. Gerber, like you said, he doesn't pull any punches. Right near the start of the section we're looking at, he says, and I'm quoting here, "I don't believe your business to be the first order of business on our agenda. You are."
Boom. Right there.
That's such a provocative thing to say, especially in a business book. He's basically saying your business isn't your life. I mean, it might be a big part of it, sure.
Huge part, potentially.
But you can't define its role, how it fits into the bigger picture, until you first define, well, your life.
Exactly. It's about hierarchy. The
Oh,
person
no.
comes first. The business. That's a tool, a vehicle, maybe even a really significant expression of who you are. But it can't be your life. And the source makes it super clear. If you don't make that distinction, if you don't put yourself first, you risk the business just totally consuming you.
Instead of serving you, serving your larger purpose.
Precisely. It shifts the whole focus away from just the external stuff, revenue, growth, market share, all that,
The usual metrics.
to the internal landscape, what's going on inside you.
And to even start figuring out this primary aim, the source says we have to ask ourselves some really deep, personal questions, almost philosophical,
Yeah, they're not your typical business planning questions.
Not at all. They're things like, what do I value most? Or what kind of life do I want?
What do I want my life to look like, to feel like? That's a big one.
It really is. And who do I wish to be? That cuts deep.
These questions are designed, I think, to strip away all the noise, all the external pressures, what other people expect,
Right.
and get right down to the core of what actually matters to you. What are your guiding principles? What experiences do you genuinely crave, like day to day?
What kind of relationships are important?
Yeah, and what kind of person are you trying to become? What qualities? The source emphasizes that the answers to all these things, taken together, start to paint that picture, your primary aim.
So it's not just one sentence.
No. It's more like a composite, a whole vision of how you want to exist.
Now, the source gives us an exercise to help articulate this vision. And it's pretty vivid, maybe even a bit confronting.
The funeral analogy. Yeah, that one hits hard.
It really does. Walk us through how Gerber sets that scene.
Okay, so he sets it up deliberately, you can tell, to create an emotional impact. He asks you to imagine this large, quiet room, golden tapestries, soft lighting, comfy chairs, your friends, your family, your business associates, everyone's there, gathered.
Okay.
And in the center, there's this beautifully decorated table, candles flickering. And on the table, an ornate box.
And inside.
Inside that box is you.
Wow. Just picturing that. Seeing yourself there with everyone you care about gathered around, it forces you to think, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It makes you consider your life from the very end, looking back. And then he adds this crucial twist. A tape recording starts to play.
Okay.
And it's your voice. You are telling the story of your life to everyone in that room, recounting what you did, who you were, the impact you had, the whole thing.
Oh, man. That's intense.
It is. And then comes the punchline, the question that makes the whole exercise so powerful. It's asked right there from within that scene, how would you like that story to go?
Right.
And the source immediately follows up with, what would you like to be able to say about your life after it's too late to do anything about it?
Oof. That is heavy. That hits right at the core of legacy, doesn't it?
Totally. But not legacy in terms of just money or
Yeah.
stuff.
No, like the quality of the life you live, the person you became.
Exactly. And the source explicitly connects it. If you were to write a script for the tape to be played for the mourners at your funeral, how would you like it to read? That's your primary aim.
So the primary aim is that script. It's the narrative you want to be true about your time here.
It's the life you intend to create, to manifest. It makes you face the end to figure out the direction for everything leading up to it.
That's powerful stuff. It's not just some vague wish. It's the detailed story you actually want told.
Precisely. And once you have that script, once you have that clear vision defined through thinking about those questions, doing this visualization,
Yeah.
well, the source presents the next step, the task.
Okay, what's the task?
It's simple, but then the source immediately adds easy. No.
Ah, the catch.
Right. The task is simply this. All you need to do is make it come true.
Simple but not easy. That distinction feels really important.
It's huge. It's simple because now you have a clear direction, right? You have the map. But it's not easy because living intentionally, making choices every single day that align with that script, that takes discipline. It takes courage. It takes a serious commitment to actively shaping your life.
Not just letting it happen to you.
Exactly. Not just passively receiving whatever comes along.
Yeah.
It means you have to actively create your life, not just, live in it.
And this is where it connects directly back to the business, right?
Yeah.
Or really any big project in your life.
Absolutely. The source argues that without that clear primary aim defined first, your business fundamentally lacks any deeper meaning. It just becomes work.
Just a job, even if it's your job, your company.
Right. You might be successful by all the conventional standards, making money, growing the company, whatever.
Sure.
But if it's not connected to that deeper personal vision, it's just work.
Yeah.
It's kind of divorced from the core of who you are and who you're trying to be.
It makes so much sense when you put it like that.
If the business is going to be more than just, paying the bills, if it's going to be, like the source says, an integral part of that tape at your funeral,
Yeah.
if it's going to contribute to the realization of your dream or become a significant component of your primary aim, well, then it absolutely has to be aligned with that aim.
And how can it be aligned if you don't even know what the aim is?
Exactly. It's impossible. It's a fundamental prerequisite. You got to do the internal work first.
It's such a powerful argument. If your business is supposed to be a vehicle for your life, you really need to know where your life is going before you build the vehicle.
Otherwise, you're just driving around. Maybe you've got a fancy car. Maybe you're going fast.
But you're aimless. Driving efficiently, maybe, but with no destination that actually matters to your soul.
And the source really hammers home the practical need for this aim. It asks this series of really sharp questions that just highlight the chaos of not having one.
Like what?
Like, how can you even begin to live the life you want if you don't have a clear picture of it? How would you know the right first step to take?
Yeah, good point.
How would you measure your progress along the way? How would you even know where you are relative to where you want to be?
How far you've come.
Or how much further you still have to go? It really lays it out.
Those questions really show how the aim acts like a compass and a map and a measuring stick all rolled into one.
Totally. And the source's answer to all those how would you know questions is just definitive. Without your primary aim, you wouldn't. Indeed, you couldn't. It would be virtually impossible.
Wow.
It serves, the source says, as the standards against which you can begin to measure your life's progress. Think about it. Any project needs goals, right? Milestones. Why would the biggest project of all your life be any different?
It shouldn't be. It makes perfect sense. And the consequence of not having those standards, that map.
The source warns your life will just drift aimlessly, without purpose, without meaning.
Yeah.
It's a pretty strong condemnation of just, letting life happen to you.
Yeah, it really is.
It underlines that the primary aim isn't just some fuzzy, feel-good idea. It's the actual essential framework for living a life that has purpose and impact. The source sums up its function beautifully, saying, your primary aim is the vision necessary to bring your business to life and your life to your business.
Bring your life to your business. I like that.
Yeah, it's the vital energy source. It provides the purpose, the energy, the actual grist for your day-to-day mill. It's what gets you out of bed in the morning, for reasons deeper than just the alarm clock.
Which leads nicely into this distinction the source makes between what it calls great people and everyone else. And it's not about fame or money.
No, not at all. It's purely about intentionality.
How does it define great people then?
It says great people are those who know how they got where they are and what they need to do to get where they're going. The key thing is they have a clear vision of their lives that they practice emulating each and every day.
They're actively working on their lives.
Exactly. That phrase from the source is perfect. Working on their lives, not just in their lives.
I love that distinction. Working on implies conscious effort, the shaping, the steering. So what about everyone else in this picture?
Everyone else is described as being sort of created by their lives, passively waiting around to see where life takes them next.
Reactive, not proactive.
Precisely. And the source draws a stark contrast. The difference between the two is the difference between living fully and just existing, or living intentionally and living by accident.
Living by accident. Gosh, that feels like it could describe a lot of people, maybe most of us, at least some of the time.
Oh, for sure.
Just reacting to stuff, bouncing from one thing to the next without that internal compass pointing the way.
It's a really common state, I think. And the source suggests it's basically the default setting, unless you make a conscious effort to define that aim.
Right.
And to really drive home this difference in mindset, the source pulls in this really potent quote. It's from Don Juan in Carlos Castaneda's book, A Separate Peace.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one. It's powerful. The difference between a warrior and an ordinary man is that a warrior sees everything as a challenge, while an ordinary man sees everything as either a blessing or a curse.
Okay, now connect that back to the primary aim.
Yeah.
Think about it. A warrior has a goal, right? A mission, a path, an aim. So when obstacles pop up, they're not just random curses to whine about. They're simply challenges on the path to achieving the aim.
Obstacles to be overcome.
Right. They require a strategic response, effort, maybe some resilience, and good things, blessings. They're not just random luck either. They're resources or opportunities that help move you toward your aim.
Whereas the ordinary man, the one without that clear aim, life's events just kind of happen to him. Good stuff is a blessing, bad stuff is a curse.
And he doesn't feel like he has much agency beyond just accepting it or complaining about it.
He's passive.
Exactly. The primary aim gives you the context, the perspective you need to interpret everything that happens. It lets you respond actively, like the warrior, instead of just reacting passively. External events become internal data points relative to your own journey.
Okay, so we get what the primary aim is and why it's so crucial. For living intentionally, for having a business that actually means something. Then the source gets more practical, doesn't it? It offers a more detailed list of questions to help you actually start defining your own aim.
Yeah, this is where it moves from the big concept to, like, concrete prompts. A guide to start writing that funeral script we talked about.
Good. What are some of those?
Well, they're designed to make you think about your desired life in specific ways. For instance, what do I wish my life to look like? But not just vaguely. It focuses on the day-to-day basis.
So what does a really good, purposeful day actually feel like? What does it look like in practice?
Exactly. Then there's, what would I like to be able to say I truly know in my life about my life? That goes deep.
Yeah, that's not just about facts or skills. It's about wisdom, right?
Yeah.
Self-understanding, really getting life and your place in it.
And then this one. How would I like to be with other people in my life? My family, my friends, my business associates, my customers, my employees, my community.
That's critical because life is relationships. And it brings the business relationships right into that personal vision.
Which is so important because for entrepreneurs especially, those lines can get really blurry. Defining how you want to be in all those interactions, that sets a powerful standard.
Definitely. What else?
It pushes you to think about how others see you and also about the future. How would I like people to think about me and the future timeframes? What would I like to be doing 2 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when my life comes to a close?
Thinking in those different chunks of time, that probably makes it less overwhelming than trying to define your whole life at once.
I think so. It gives you tangible markers along the timeline, but keeps the long-term vision in focus.
Makes sense.
And the list keeps going, hitting different areas of growth. What specifically would I like to learn during my life? Spiritually, physically, financially, technically, intellectually, about relationships.
So it emphasizes that the aim involves growing constantly across your whole being. It's not just about doing stuff, but about the journey of becoming.
Exactly. And finally, it brings in the practical side. How much money will I need to do the things I wish to do? By when will I need it?
And notice it's not how much money do you want, full stop.
Right. It's how much do you need to support the life you just defined? Money serves the aim.
It becomes a means to an end, dictated by your life vision, not the end goal itself. That completely flips the usual entrepreneurial script of chasing financial targets first.
Totally. The money target comes from the life vision, not the other way around.
That's a huge shift.
And the source reminds us again. The answers to all these questions, they don't just sit there on a piece of paper. They become the standards against which you can begin to measure your life's progress.
They're your personal benchmarks, the criteria you use to make decisions, to see if you're on track or drifting off course.
Without them, like we said, you just drift.
Okay, this whole framework is incredibly powerful conceptually, but sometimes, it takes a real story to make it click, and the source does that now, right? It shifts gears.
It does. It first mentions Sarah again, the entrepreneur from the book, having that light bulb moment. That's what's been missing in my business, me, which is probably super common.
Oh, yeah.
And then Gerber says, let me tell you a story. And he launches into this really long, detailed narrative.
And the story serves as a kind of case study, right? Illustrating the problem and the solution.
Exactly. And as you get into it, you start to realize, wait a minute, he's not just telling a story, he's telling his own story.
It's Michael Gerber's life he's describing.
Yeah. His own experience of living for a long, long time without a consciously defined primary aim.
And the picture he paints, it's a life that maybe from the outside looked dynamic, maybe even exciting, but inside it sounds profoundly rudderless.
Totally. He talks about hitting 40 and feeling like his life was just going nowhere. No clear career, no real purpose driving him.
Dropping out of college.
Sampling everything, music, religion, even, drugs and chasing money schemes. But nothing stuck. Nothing offered that sense of permanence or direction tied to a future he actually wanted.
It sounds like a classic picture of just following impulses or talents or whatever seemed necessary at the time, but without that deep anchor of purpose. Lots of movement.
Yeah, driving cross-country, joining the army, going to Korea, traveling Europe on a scooter, busking, driving a cab.
Constant motion.
But it was the motion of drifting, not directed travel towards a known destination.
He mentions his first marriage, too, having kids, settling down for a bit, selling encyclopedias door to door.
Right, in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But he calls that time a running battle that ended in divorce. And he's pretty honest, acknowledging his wife had her struggles, but he also points the finger at himself specifically, his own lack of purpose.
That's a really crucial insight, isn't it? That internal aimlessness doesn't just mess with your career. It bleeds into your personal life, your relationships.
For sure. He wasn't grounded, and that instability just rippled outwards.
Then he meets his second wife. She's younger, appreciates his creative side, the poetry, the music. Life takes a more positive turn, he says.
But, and this is key, the source reveals that the underlying ache, that heartfelt need for connecting with something that smacked of purpose, it was still there, bothering him privately.
So even finding a supportive partner or having things look better on the surface couldn't fill that internal void left by not having a purpose.
Nope. He was still searching. Still without that central organizing principle for his life.
So he tries another direction, contracting.
Yeah, goes back to college, studies contracting, wants to work with his hands instead of his mouth, as he puts it, moves down to Southern California, starts doing framing jobs, gets fired a bunch until he learns the ropes.
Right.
He describes himself in his late 30s, working alongside guys 20 years younger, feeling like a total outlier, a freak.
But he also sort of romanticizes it a bit, doesn't he? The look, the lifestyle.
Oh, yeah. The beard, the long hair, the poetry readings, listening to jazz, eating burritos, smoking dope. He paints this picture, and this dream starts to emerge. Buying land up in Mendocino, building a house, raising a family there, bringing his older daughters into it.
Okay, so a dream starts forming.
He calls the life down in Santa Ana during that time a sense-steaming days that seemed at the time close to what the perfect life must be like.
But that qualifier seemed at the time is so telling, isn't it?
Totally. It hints that it wasn't actually the perfect life. It was just another phase, maybe a more appealing kind of days than selling encyclopedias, but still maybe escapist, defining himself by external things like location and lifestyle instead of that deeper internal purpose.
It wasn't necessarily rooted in the who do I wish to be or what kind of life do I want to feel like, beyond just the sensory stuff.
Right. And then comes the big plot twist, the unpredictable turn. He and his wife head north, planning to chase that Mendocino dream. They're staying temporarily with family.
And then what?
An unexpected job offer pops up. Consulting work for an ad agency down in Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley, that seems like a total left turn from building a house in Mendocino.
Completely.
Yeah.
And the source makes a point of saying that everyone, including Gerber himself, saw this as just a temporary gig, a detour. The real plan, the true calling, was still the acreage up north.
It just shows how easily we can get sidetracked, doesn't it? Even when we think we have a dream, if it's not anchored in that deeper primary aim.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is how other people saw him back then. Despite the chaotic past, the lack of direction, the instability, he describes himself as living pretty close to the edge, on the cusp of middle age, no real home, chasing this unaffordable dream property.
Yeah.
Yet his friends and family envied him. Can you believe that?
They envied him. Why?
The source says they envied him because he seemed so free. Despite the perpetual trouble he found himself in, despite his lack of direction, it's this crazy paradox.
They saw the freedom from, like, a normal life, maybe, but they missed the internal cost of the drifting, the lack of purpose that had even tanked his first marriage.
Yeah, and he himself was, as the source puts it, totally unprepared for what was about to happen.
Which was stepping into Silicon Valley.
Right, stepping onto the moving stairs, as the source calls it. He describes it as a total stunner, like landing on another planet, calling on these tech companies.
Names he couldn't even pronounce.
Making stuff he didn't even know existed. He felt completely out of his league, dumbfounded by the magnitude of his ignorance.
So in meetings, when clients asked how he could help,
His honest answer was, I don't know. They'd ask, what do you know about my business? And he'd say, nothing.
wow, that takes guts. Or maybe desperation.
Maybe a bit of both. But he also had this intuition. He sensed something was there, some connection he could make.
And he contrasts this new world so vividly with his old life-selling encyclopedias door to door.
Oh yeah, that grinding away, dealing with suspicious people, the whole choreographed pitch, revealing the colorful panels.
Waiting for the yes or no.
The confrontations, like getting attacked by that dog.
Right. That dog story is something else. It really grounds his past struggles in gritty reality, doesn't it? Compared to the maybe more abstract world of early tech.
Totally. And his reaction to Silicon Valley just shows how much he needed to change, even if he didn't consciously know it. He calls it a miracle, like, and I get to do this during the day, compared to the slog of encyclopedia sales.
But he still felt inadequate.
Oh yeah, feeling stupid, knowing nothing.
Yeah.
But he also had this gut feeling, this intuition that came from his weird, messy life.
Yeah.
His unconscious, cataclysmic, totally disorganized, yet always passionate state, as he calls it. He somehow knew he had a perspective, a way of seeing things that these brilliant tech people maybe lacked. He'd survived the school of hard knocks, you know.
And that unique background, plus his willingness to just be honest about what he didn't know, that led to the big moment. The source calls it the curtain lifted.
Yes. That's the absolute core metaphor of his whole story. It represents this massive paradigm shift. The source says the curtain lifted between the world that was theirs and the world that was his.
Okay.
But even more importantly, it was the curtain that stood between himself and himself, the curtain that separated him from his life.
Yeah. Separating him from himself, from his own life. That's such a powerful image for living without that conscious aim, without self-awareness. So what did he see when the curtain lifted? What was the big realization?
It hit him like a ton of bricks. This sudden, almost giddy truth. He realized that, yeah, he didn't understand their businesses. But guess what? Neither did they.
Huh? Seriously?
Seriously, they were just as lost, just in a different way. In that one shuddering instant of truth, he saw that no one knew what was going on. He was completely open to interpretation, and his guess was as good as anyone's. My God, probably even better.
So they were all just figuring it out as they went along.
Pretty much. And he kind of jokes about his unique qualification being surviving the encyclopedia game, especially the dog attack. Like, who in Silicon Valley could say that and live to tell about it?
Yeah.
And he'd even made the sale.
It's funny, but it makes a point. His messy, real-world, non-linear life had actually equipped him with a perspective on uncertainty and human dynamics that was valuable.
Incredibly valuable. So right there, at age 38, he says he experienced a rebirth. He discovered an entirely new life, and for the very first time, he found a purpose.
And what was the purpose? Was it business consulting?
No, not exactly. It wasn't a specific job or a place or a lifestyle. It was a state of being. His purpose became to never let the curtain down again. To never allow the curtain to cover what was hiding there behind it.
Okay, so what was hiding behind the curtain?
The truth. The truth about the world, that it wasn't this neat, orderly place where experts had all the answers like he'd maybe assumed. The truth about other people, that they didn't necessarily know what he thought they knew. They were often just as uncertain. And maybe most importantly, the truth about himself, that he wasn't uniquely lost or flawed. That uncertainty, that not knowing, it's part of the human condition.
Wow, so his real purpose wasn't something external to achieve, but an internal state to maintain.
Exactly. To be open, to be awake, to be available to what's really going on, to give up false beliefs. That became his mission.
And the stakes were...
As the source puts it, dramatically but probably accurately for him, and for only one reason. His life was at stake, because his life before that moment had been lived behind this curtain of false assumptions about himself, about the world. It kept him from really engaging with reality, with his own potential.
So the rest of the story briefly touches on his life after this big realization.
Yeah, it summarizes quickly the end of his second marriage, eventually becoming a recognized expert in his field, finding a third marriage, having more kids, building a successful business which apparently almost failed and had to be rebuilt.
Facing challenges head on.
Right. He describes living fully, using all these active verbs. He lanced, jabbed, wrestled, grappled, laughed, sang, loved, and roared. It sounded like a life filled with vitality, actively engaged, a total contrast to the drifting years.
And through all that, the one constant lesson was...
The curtain, keep the curtain up at all cost. Because that curtain represented all the self-imposed limits, the fear, the false beliefs, everything that kept him shrouded in darkness, holding out the light of clarity, openness, reality.
And the source brings this whole powerful personal story right back to Sarah, the entrepreneur in the book, and really right back to us, the listeners.
It does. It makes the point explicit. It's not your business you have to fear losing. It's something much bigger than that. It's yourself. And that, Gerber concludes, is what this whole thing is about. It's way bigger than just business advice. It's an imperative for how to live.
He uses the story to challenge us directly, too, doesn't he? Echoing those questions about the curtain.
Yeah. What truths are your curtain hiding from you? What misunderstanding keeps you where you are, shrouded in your limited beliefs, shrinking from the world? It forces you to look inward and ask what barriers you've put up that stop you from defining and living your own aim.
And the call to action that follows is pretty intense. Until you lift the curtain, dare to pull the mask off the world's face. Move beyond your comfort zone. You never know what it is you are missing out there.
And what he suggests you're missing. It isn't some external thing like better job or more money. It's internal. What's waiting for you on the other side of that curtain? He says, it's you. It's you that's waiting out there for you to find on the other side of the curtain.
That is such a profound thought. The whole journey of self-discovery isn't about finding something out there, but finding the real you that's been hidden. Hidden by your own limiting beliefs, your own assumptions, your own curtain.
And Gerber wraps up his personal story by driving home the core lesson he learned when that curtain finally lifted for him. That there's no one else out there but you. It really sums up the idea that our experience of the world is filtered through our internal state. The biggest discoveries, the most important changes, they happen inside. Purpose isn't found out there. It's uncovered in here.
Okay, so let's try and tie all this together for you listening right now. We've gone on quite a journey here. From that fundamental idea that you come first, not your business, through the powerful ways Gerber suggests defining your life, vision, those deep questions, the consenting funeral analogy for writing your life script.
Recognizing why that aim is absolutely necessary as a compass for living intentionally.
Right. We saw that distinction between people who shape their lives and those who are shaped by them, highlighted by that warrior analogy.
We looked at the practical questions you can actually use to start crafting your own primary aim.
And then we walked through Michael Gerber's incredibly raw and honest story, living without purpose, until that huge shift, that curtain-lifting moment, where he didn't find the world, he found himself.
Yeah, and the big takeaway, the message distilled from all of this source material, seems crystal clear. Your business, your career, whatever your work is, it can only be truly fulfilling, truly impactful, if it's built as an authentic extension of your personal vision for your life, your primary aim.
If you try to build the business first without knowing what kind of life you want it to serve,
you risk building something that feels empty or just wrong. Even if it looks successful on the outside, it won't align with who you really are. It's about bringing your whole self to your work.
And that starts with figuring out who your whole self is and what you're striving for.
Exactly.
So the call to action seems pretty clear, even if, as Gerber says, it's not easy. It's to actually engage with those questions he poses.
Take them seriously. Don't just nod along listening to us talk about them.
Right. Write them down. Try that funeral visualization. Actually, imagine writing the script for the life you truly want to have lived.
Even just spending, say, 15 minutes exploring one or two of those questions, that could be the first step, the start of lifting your own curtain, just starting the conversation with yourself.
It definitely takes courage, doesn't it? To look inward like that, to define what really matters before the world tries to define it for you.
It does. But the potential reward, having a life, and maybe a business that's built with genuine purpose and meaning, where your work actually helps you realize your deepest dreams, that's immense.
Your work becomes so much more powerful then, doesn't it? More joyful, more resilient, probably, when it's anchored in that personal vision.
Absolutely.
And this isn't just some business strategy for entrepreneurs, is it? It feels like a fundamental principle for living a truly engaged life, no matter what you do.
Totally. Your business, your job, it's a powerful vehicle. Yeah. But your primary aim is the destination that gives the whole journey meaning.
And like Gerber's story shows, sometimes the biggest discovery is just finding the nerve to see what you've been hiding from yourself behind that curtain all along.
Finding the self that's waiting for you.
So if the greatest discovery really is, like Gerber suggests, that there's no one else out there but you, what kind of adventure does that make your life? And if your life's purpose, maybe, is simply to keep that curtain up, to stay open to reality, open to yourself, what's one specific action you need to take today to make sure it doesn't fall?
Those are definitely questions worth living into. They demand an answer, and maybe a life lived trying to find it.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Michael Gerber's concept of the primary aim. We really hope it's given you some rich food for thought as you navigate your own path.
Yeah, definitely gives you a lot to think about. Until next time.